Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar in Investing in Rural America. With that, I turn it over to Chris McLean, the Assistant Administrator for Rural Utility Service Electric Programs. Chris?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a exciting webinar. And we are so glad that you're setting the pace for a new era of rural electrification this afternoon. We're going to discuss two exciting new programs, the Powering Affordable Clean Energy Program PACE under Section 22001 of the IRA, and the Empowering Rural America, or the New Era program under Section 22004 of the IRA. And so we're so glad that you're here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the presenter for today's session, Claire Swarsky, who is the Senior Energy Counsel for the Undersecretary for Rural Development. Claire, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris, and welcome everyone. For many of you, you may have already seen this presentation once, maybe even twice. It's also up on our website. We want to make sure that everyone has access to the same information. So you may have already seen this. If so, don't worry. This is still going to be interesting for you. What we're planning to do is we have the next 90 minutes together. I'm planning to go over the presentation again about these two programs so folks can get their head in the game on what we're talking about here. And then we have a lot of our experts from our team on the line as well, so that we can spend a good amount of time doing questions and answers. And so we will be able to hopefully get to all of your questions and answers. You'll be able to post them as noted, or can even raise your hand, etc. So we will have hopefully a lively discussion where we can answer some of your questions. If it's the case that we want to come back to you with an answer, we may tell you that we will take that for FAQ, for a question and answer that we'll post on our website. We are going to be regularly updating our questions and answers online so that folks who don't get to participate in a webinar or are not present or didn't see a question will also have access to that answer. So we are regularly going to be updating our Q&A online to make sure everybody has access to the latest information and clarifying points, etc. Because, this can get a little bit complex, and we want everybody to feel really comfortable with the material and really comfortable that you have the information you need to apply and succeed in accessing these awesome historic funds. So as Chris said, today we're talking about two programs. Setting the pace for a new era, the Powering Affordable Clean Energy Program, IRA Section 22001, who, for those of you who love to go back to the original statute, and Empowering Rural America, New Era, IRA Section 22004. And I think we've talked a lot about this. This is the largest investment in rural electrification since the 1930s, so it's a big deal. And it's two brand new programs that offer grants, loans, loan modifications, partial loan forgiveness. So a lot of new tools on the table here that we haven't been able to put on the table before. So that's super exciting, and hopefully will make a big difference in making your projects pencil out and getting you excited to take advantage of this opportunity. Our goal is to make sure that we are improving health, reducing pollution, lowering energy costs for rural Americans. And again, really see this as a once in a generation opportunity. Hopefully we'll continue to have great resources to continue these kinds of investments in rural America, but we should take advantage of this to its maximum extent. We're going to hopefully see a lot of great economic development come out of this, and again, enhance people's quality of lives, which is what we're all trying to do at the end of the day. So next slide, please. So first, we're going to talk about PACE, the Powering Affordable Clean Energy Program. People have pointed out to us, and we knew this going in, that PACE are also property assessed clean energy, where it's a separate PACE program where you can get loans for energy efficiency and based on your property. This is a different PACE. We figured it would be okay to call it the same thing because it's a different program, but also to get people talking. So if you are familiar with the other PACE, this is a new additional PACE to add to your toolkit. And the program goals, again, really increase energy in rural America, clean energy in rural America, make it significantly more affordable for consumers, and especially for distressed energy communities, tribal communities, others. to heat and cool homes, run your businesses, power your cars, schools and hospitals, in this kind of, again, in a new era of energy where we have access to all of these great innovations that are now affordable. And now more affordable with partially forgivable loans. So we are providing partially forgivable loans for, we say utility scale here. What we mean is, anywhere from 1 megawatt to, or $1 million project to $100 million project. We'll talk about that on the next slide. But meant to be, good size clean energy projects. They can be wind, solar, hydropower, biomass, geothermal, and excitingly, they can include energy storage, which is what really is going to make a difference in reliability and resiliency for a lot of communities. So you can include energy storage in your renewable projects. And we are proposing we've proposed a two-stage process. We're still getting used to these being out in the public. We'll be following a two-stage process. It's meant to be a kind of low barrier to entry first step. So you'll submit electronically a letter of interest. We will open that portal window on June 30th, and it will be open until September 29th, and we'll be accepting letters of interest on a rolling basis and evaluating them as they're received. So again, that portal window will open June 30th, and we are looking to put online a kind of draft letter of interest so you can have an even better sense of what that will look like in terms of the information that we'll be requesting. It is outlined in the funding announcement what information we're going to be requiring of you. So you can find it there as well, but we're looking to make that even easier for you to see. And we'll probably have something on our website within the next week or so to make that a little bit clearer for folks. Again, we'll accept them on a rolling basis, evaluate them on a rolling basis. And what will happen is once you submit your letter of interest, if you meet all of our requirements, we will come back to you as soon as possible and say, great, please submit a full application. We will ask for that full application within 60 days and, can discuss if you need a little bit longer, but that will be kind of the basic timeline. And I'll run through that again at the end of talking about the PACE program. So next slide, please. So who is eligible? This is our broadly eligible program, which is super exciting. So can be for-profit, corporations, states and territories, municipalities, utilities, cooperatives, nonprofits, Indian tribes, Alaska Native tribes, Alaska Native corporations, etc. So it's a very wide eligibility here, which is really exciting. One thing we wanted to make sure of, though, was that because we have wide eligibility, we really want as many folks as possible to be able to benefit from this program. So we are saying only one application per eligible entity. And a couple of things to keep in mind as you're developing your projects or as you're proposing projects is that, the project must produce renewable energy for resale. If you're a utility, it can be to your members. So you can resell to your members. It just means that this is not for your own individual use. It can't be renewable energy for your own individual use. And then you must serve at least 50% rural customers. We want to make sure that these programs are benefiting rural America. So we want to make sure that at least 50% are rural customers. And I think one thing that we don't necessarily talk about in this presentation, but I would note here as well, is that speaking of benefits, is that you will need to have a community benefit plan. It's kind of broad definition in terms of what that looks like. But again, we really want to make sure that these projects are serving rural America and benefiting rural Americans. And so we have included a community benefit requirement as well. Again, eligible activities, renewable power generation per the statute, wind, solar, geothermal, hydropower, biomass, and storage for that renewable energy. And then here's where it gets really exciting. The forgiveness levels, we have 3 categories of forgiveness. So 20% total loan forgiveness for any applicant that meets our minimum requirements. Again, that's in the funding opportunity announcement. Category 2, up to 40% total loan forgiveness if 50% or more of the population served by the proposal is located in either an energy community or a distressed or disadvantaged community. And so you can see the definitions for those in the funding announcement. Energy community is the same definition that the Treasury Department is using. And then distressed community is the definition that the Justice 40 White House initiative is using. And then disadvantaged community is a metric that we like to use at rural development because we think it really reflects rural America and disadvantaged communities in rural America. And that's through the DCI, the Distressed Community Index. And if you have a Distressed Community Index score of 80 or more, then you are eligible. So our amazing mapping team has provided maps for these. So you can put in the location of your project and you can see if it's an energy community, distressed community, disadvantaged community. So you can play with that and make sure that you qualify for that category. But those are the three kind of categories for 40% total loan forgiveness. And then for category 3, 60% total loan forgiveness if the project is located in Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, other U.S. territories, or compact-free association states. Or the proposed service area consists of 60% or more tribal area or serves an area that constitutes what we call a SUTA, a substantially underserved trust area. Or the project is owned by a tribe, an Indian tribe defined, as you can see here, by the federally recognized Indian Tribeless Act of 1994, or is an Alaska Native Corporation. So hopefully these categories are really clear. Folks can figure out what level of forgiveness they're eligible for. And I would note that we are planning on having a kind of minimum of 300 million of our budget authority go to each category so that we don't have one single category, gobbling up all the funds, and that we have a good distribution between these three categories. And that there's also some kind of discretion around geographic diversity and things like that we have written into the funding announcement as well. So that we can make sure, again, that there's wide distribution, wide diversity of folks that are benefiting from this program. Projects can be anywhere from 1 million to 100 million, inclusive of the forgiveness. And again, we have a total of budget authority of $1 billion for this program. And a couple of the things I would note is just that, we've written, eligibility is broad. The off-takers for this program are also, it's also quite flexible. Could be individual residents. It could be a industrial off-taker. So you'll see in the funding announcement, it's pretty broad in terms of who the off-takers are. It's also broad in terms of what kind of financial arrangement you need to have. We love power purchase agreements. We would love for the folks who are applying for this to have a power purchase agreement as part of their project, as how they're structuring it financially. But there is openness to other models as well. And so you can take a look at that in the funding announcement. The main thing is that we want to make sure that the project is financially feasible and viable. And so that's what we'll be looking for in our conversations with you. And that's what we'll be looking for in terms of the information and documentation you provide us. Next slide. Again, we are moving forward quickly. And so we have we put out for publication the funding announcement, the notice of funding opportunity, NOFO. My husband said he never wants to hear that word again. So just calling it the funding announcement. The funding announcement is out, and we will be hosting webinars, speaking at conferences. We are available to answer questions. Again, want to make sure everybody has the same information though. So we'll be doing that, answering questions through FAQs online. We'll be answering questions through webinars, etc. If you have an individual question, we'll have an email address at the end of this that you can send it to. But really, we encourage you to join. You've joined today's webinar. We encourage you to join other webinars if you have additional questions so we can get your answers to you quickly. And then June 30th is when we'll open this up. So that is the date to be gearing up for. You will be able to submit your letter of interest starting June 30th, and we'll be reviewing those on a rolling basis. Like I said, starting in July, we'll be reviewing those, and then we'll be inviting folks to submit full applications. And then, starting September 1st, we're hoping to make some of our first awards. So we'll be making those through next year as well and beyond. But we are really looking forward to folks applying for this program, getting their applications in. And like I said, we will have a letter of interest kind of template online so folks can see what we're looking for and what that portal will request. But that is also outlined in the funding announcement. Next slide. So that is our PACE program. And if you are doing kind of a standalone clean energy project, that's the program that probably makes sense for you, especially if you are not a rural cooperative. But that program is available to you if you are as well. This is our Empowering Rural America New Era program. This is the $9.7 billion in budget authority for electric cooperatives. And again, that's defined as folks who have been or previously were or are or previously were rural utility services or REA borrowers and cooperative entities serving a predominantly rural area or wholly or jointly owned subsidiary. So really, this is the cooperative program. And this program has a clear goal written into the statute to achieve the greatest reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, making sure that we are supporting long-term resiliency, reliability, and affordability. These programs, all of our programs are voluntary. And we are just looking for folks that want to engage here and want to take advantage of this opportunity to really transform their energy systems. And so this is really about system change here. The activities supported are broad, so you can purchase renewable energy, you can build your own renewable energy, you can build zero emission systems, you can do carbon capture and storage, you can do the things that are required to deploy those systems, and you can also do energy efficiency improvements to generation and transmission, any combination of those things. You'll see the list in the funding announcement includes, a few other things on that list, grid edge investments, mini grids, et cetera, renewable mini grids. So a lot of activities supported here, and a lot of different tools have been put on the table here. Really, the thing that we heard from everybody was that flexibility here is key, and that everybody has different needs and is a different place. And so what folks asked for and what we heard from you was that you wanted flexibility, and so we have built this program that way. So you can access grants up to 25% of your total project cost. You can access loans fixed at 2% or tied to the Treasury rate. And you can have up to or as low as 0% financing for predominantly distressed, disadvantaged, or energy communities, as well as if you're replacing a stranded asset. And we can also refinance your debt. So if you have debt for a stranded asset, we can refinance that debt as low as 0% interest. And you can do any combination of the above as well. So we are really wanting folks to feel like this is a program that can work for them and that you can ask for what you need, and that we're not boxing folks into certain, we're not putting, squares into round holes, or some kind of analogy like that, that you are really able to apply for what you think you need and help make this a clean energy transition and take advantage of all of the innovation that we've seen over the last couple of decades. Next slide. Again, eligible entities here are our electric cooperatives, and then eligible uses are those that are listed here, as well as a slightly more extensive list you can see in the funding announcement. And just like with the PACE program, we're going to have a two-step process. So your first step is the letter of interest. And again, we encourage everybody to apply. We want this to be an easy first step so that we are being as inclusive as possible. And this step is where the competition is. So unlike the PACE program that is just going to be done on a rolling basis and we're going to be processing as we go, this is a competitive program because of the statutory language that we have to achieve the greatest greenhouse gas reductions possible. So this letter of interest stage is when we'll be doing that competition, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But we will open the portal for this program on July 31st, and then we'll close it by August 31st. So August 31st is your deadline to get in your letter of interest, and it must meet our minimum requirements. Again, we will be adding some more information online, what this is going to look like. We will score your proposals according to the letter of interest. And we'll want to make sure that we see in there things like, the baseline is that you're going to be proposing something that's reliable and resilient and affordable for your members, for your customers that you serve. After the letter of interest phase, and after we score those letter of interest, we will be then inviting folks to submit full applications. So the most competitive applicants will be offered the most attractive packages and will be invited to submit a full application. Again, we're asking for a full proposal within 60 days. There can be some flexibility around that. We've included language about mutually agreeable dates, but we all know that energy projects take a long time to get underway. We have till 2031 to get everything in place, September 30th, 2031. But we want to get this moving as quickly as possible for you all, knowing that there are supply chain challenges and that there are processes that will need to be undertaken in terms of environmental review in some cases and things like that. So we want to get you underway as soon as possible. And then just to note here that we do reserve the right in the funding announcement to negotiate a final package of assistance. So it may be that you come to us with your proposal and that we come back to you with a slightly different proposal. And so just wanted to make sure that that is clear from the get-go. Again, allowable funding requests. You can propose assistance for any single product or combination of the following. Loans to finance the cost of new clean energy projects at the Treasury rate or at low interest rates as low as 2%. Grant funding up to 25% of the total up to 25% of the total cost of the project. And then refinancing of stranded assets at interest rates as low as 0%, with reinvestment in eligible activities. So you do have to use the benefits of that refinancing and put that back into eligible activities. And that's how we read the statute as being written. And then you can also apply for loans with interest rates as low as 0% for projects serving predominantly disadvantaged communities, energy communities, distressed communities, and if you are replacing a stranded asset. So a lot is on the table here, which is exciting. And hopefully is getting you to start thinking creatively. So next slide, please. Scoring. So scoring for this program, again, we were given the mandate from the statute of achieving the greatest reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. And there are a lot of different ways to think about greenhouse gas emissions and reductions. Some places are growing rapidly, some places are not. Some places are starting with a heavy carbon intensive energy mix, some places are not. So what we wanted to do here was to create a bit of an on-ramp for all different folks, depending, wherever you are starting from. And so we want you to be able to have points on the board, if you will. And so you can get a maximum of 60 points. And the largest category is annual tons of CO2 equivalent greenhouse gas emissions reduced, because that follows the statutory language to the T, and that is self-generated or purchased. And then second category is annual tons of greenhouse gas emissions avoided, up to 10 points. So that's kind of taking into account avoided emissions are really taking into account the fact that you could be growing. And so you're growing maybe with renewables or zero emission systems instead of growing with fossil-based solutions. And then percentage increase in renewable or zero emissions energy in your energy mix, owned or purchased. All of these are owned or purchased. And then percentage decrease in carbon intensity in your energy mix. So again, trying to create an on-ramp for various folks at wherever you are in the process. But again, with the goal being greatest reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. We will be scoring folks relative to their total utility plant size. So we'll come to that on the next slide, but we want, again, trying to think through how to be as fair as possible in this program. We want folks competing amongst peers. And in terms of fairness and trying to make sure that we are comparing apples to apples, Our team has developed a great tool, the Achievable Reduction Tool. So it can be the art of the possible to calculate greenhouse gas emission reductions in these 4 categories. And there are many different models out there. EPA has models, DOE has models, there are private sector models to look at how you're achieving your greenhouse gas reductions. And there's a lot of different ways to calculate that. What this aims to do is to have a really simple methodology that every bit will apply to everybody. So again, we can compare proposals apples to apples. This art is the Achievable Reduction Tool is not meant to be, the most precise tool in the world. Again, we wanted something very simple to compare apples to apples. So precision was not necessarily the number one goal, although we want it to be largely precise. The real goal here is, again, to make sure that we have a single way to calculate greenhouse gas emissions in the same way for every applicant. And so we will also be putting this online soon, so you can see exactly how we're doing that. And then you'll also have the opportunity to, if you don't feel like the Achievable Reduction Tool captures the emission reductions that you're going to be achieving, you can also, there'll be a place for you to submit that information as well, in addition to filling out the art. And you can let us know how else you'll be reducing emissions if it's not fully captured in this kind of simple, straightforward tool. We're also going to be doing a webinar just on the Achievable Reduction Tool on June 8th. So that will be posted on our website as well. And so you can join us on June 8th to see exactly how that's going to work, how it's been designed. And again, the actual tool itself will be online before then, so that you can play with it and start seeing how we're thinking about this in a more concrete way. Evaluation criteria, in addition to greenhouse gas, we wanted to include some discretion for important things like consumer benefits for affordability. So you'll be requested to provide some information on rates and what those would look like with the award and without the award, so we can have a good sense of consumer benefits or likely consumer benefits, project costs per unit of greenhouse gas emissions reduced, so we can be thinking about, what are you achieving per cost of unit reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, geographic distribution, efficient use of funds. So there's some discretion here that we'll have according to these clear criteria, and we can take these into account as well. The primary scoring, though, will be around these greenhouse gas reduction metrics. So next slide. Again, wanted to make this as fair as possible so that you are competing with your peers. So we've got 3 categories that folks will compete within. So you'll compete within your own category. And the 3 categories we've kind of made according to total utility plant value, which after a lot of thinking was what made the most sense, is folks that have a total utility plant value equal to or over 500 million. Applicants with category 2 are applicants with a total utility plant value under 500 million, but over 200 million. And then that 3rd category are for folks that have a total utility plant value of less than 200 million. And we roughly think that we'll allocate funding likely, up to 20% going to category 3, up to 20% going to category 2, and at least 60% going towards that category 1, because category 1 are the biggest entities and will be requiring the largest amounts of funds. So, but we also wanted to make sure, again, that there's space for smaller entities to compete and to access funding. So this is how we have tried to square that circle and make sure that we are, again, being as inclusive as possible here. On that point, we also are allowing joint applications. Consolidated groups of entities can submit a single letter of interest for consideration. We would guess that you will want to, if you do go that route, that you'll want to disaggregate your financial commitments so that you aren't trying to enter into joint liability. But again, can decide that as we go along. And as you guys, if there are consolidated groups, you can decide whether you want to have disaggregated commitments or joint liability. And then group LOIs will compete in the category reflective of their combined value of their combined total utility plant value. So that's how we will treat that. Some benefits of joint applications might be sharing resources, sharing staff resources to be able to apply, things like that. And again, just wanting to make sure that there's an on-ramp for everybody that wants to compete in this program. Next slide, please. Timeline for New Era. So again, we have the publication of the funding announcement is out. And again, between now and July 31st, we'll be hosting webinars, speaking at conferences, answering your questions. And then July 31st, that portal will open online for letters of interest, and it will close August 31st. We'll spend the month of September busily reviewing all of those applications, scoring them, ranking those letters of interest. And then October and November, we'll be inviting folks to submit full applications. Again, aiming for doing so within 60 days, unless otherwise agreed to with the agency. And we're hoping that, we'll be able to even start obligating some funds, announcing awards starting in December of this year, and then throughout next year and beyond. Next slide, please. We are having today's webinar. We'll also have one on the 24th, the 31st, the 1st. And as I mentioned, we are going to have one just on the ART tool for the New Era program on June 8th. So that will be posted on our website as well. This actual presentation is already on our website, so you can access it on our website, and there's kind of details on information otherwise at this QR code. And we have, if you go to the next slide, we have many more QR codes for you to link on. So maybe, take a screenshot of this. But again, this is also on our webpage. And again, want to make sure you have the information you need. And I think that one thing that Chris pointed out in the last presentation he did on this was to please register as soon as you can at sam.gov. If you are not yet registered, that can take some time, and you have to be registered at sam.gov to be able to apply for our programs. So please go to sam.gov and register. And then for folks looking at the PACE program and wanting to engage there, you can click on this bottom left QR code to see USDA lending rates. That program is being done at the municipal rate, and you can see what that's looked like historically on our website. And then, of course, in the upper left hand, this is our General Rural Development Inflation Reduction Act page. And you can also access the webpage to our electric programs, and also sign up for news with Gov Delivery. So please sign up for news so you get the latest on our webinars, on things like that. So next slide. I think that this is now where, again, you can contact us. You can contact your RUS, Rural Utility Service General Field Representative here. Our general field representatives can answer questions according to what the information that is publicly available is. And so if you ask them a question that is not a publicly advanced, doesn't have a publicly available answer yet, they will submit it to us, and we will do a Q&A on it so that that information gets back to you and to everyone. And we'll be looking for them to maybe be able to provide some technical assistance down the road. So to be determined, or to be further announced on how your general field representatives can assist you. But in the meantime, right now, you can certainly ask them questions, and they can answer them according to the funding announcement that's out. They can also relay questions back to us so that we can get them back out to everybody. And our frequently asked questions, or some of them won't be frequently asked, but there'll definitely be questions that were asked that we want to make sure, again, that everybody has the answers to. We'll be regularly updating our website with additional Q&A at this QR code at this site, and you can send additional questions to this email address. So I think now we've got a lot of Q&A that has been posted already. You can go to the next slide. I think that's it. and we can move on. We can, I think, pull down the slides and just go to screen. And now is the exciting part for everybody, where you can ask your questions. We can go through them, and we have our full team on the line to be able to help answer them. And again, if there's something that that we want to come back to you with, we might tell you that as well. That we'll come back to you with a formal Q&A on. I think we also have our lawyers on the line, so they can jump in if we say anything that sounds not quite right. So lawyers, please feel to jump in as well. And Chris, thanks for coming back on screen. Anybody else from our team that wants to come on screen is welcome to, if you want to be part of answering the Q&A, or we might just call you out. But I think that we will start we'll just start with the Q&A and go down. Does that sound good, Chris? Start from the top and go to the bottom? Okay, great. So thank you for those who have submitted questions in the chat. Please feel free to continue to do so. And we will just start going through. And so it's not just my voice. I will turn it over to Chris as well to answer questions. And again, maybe others from our team. So CP Smith, you posted first. What are the criteria that must be met to have the loans be forgivable? So I'll start and then maybe just kick it over to Chris, but it's outlined in the funding announcement. You need to be able to show us that your project is going to be financially feasible. You need to be an upstanding entity. You will need to put together a community benefit plan. And those are the primary pieces, but Chris, do you want to jump in with anything else in terms of criteria for forgivable loans?
Yeah, I think you're right. It has to be financially feasible and technologically feasible. It has to be executable within the time frame of the funding notice and the program. We have to have everything completed by the end of fiscal year 31, which is before September
30th. Yeah, 2031.
So we have, and actually considerably before that, because we're not going to go up to the very last day. The project has to be constructed, built, cleared environmental review, and delivered and validated by us. So applicant in both of these programs, as we move from the LOI stage to the application stage, applicants will be giving us more specifics about exactly what they plan to do. And those specifics will be written into the agreement. And if you execute on what you promised to do, if you move from the LOI stage to the application stage and the application stage to the award stage, then that will define what the terms are of earning your debt forgiveness. And in both cases, in New Era as well as in PACE, either in PACE, the debt forgiveness, or New Era, the grant amount won't be awarded until we have received the delivery and validation that the project is complete. So,
and what criteria would result in the loan not being forgiven? So, Chris, I think you just said that.
Yeah, and if you fail to deliver, then you do risk not getting the debt forgiven or getting the full amount of the debt forgiven. So if you miss the deadline, you can't deliver within the 2031 timeframe, well, then you would not be able to get the debt forgiven, because we wouldn't have the authority to be able to obligate the funds. If you promise us, I don't know, 100 megawatt solar project, and we get a 25 megawatt solar project, well, then you probably haven't delivered. And again, the consequences may be that you either not get the award, or you get a dramatic reduction.
And the third part of your question, CP, is the loan forgiveness discretionary on departmental leadership, or is this based on a formula? So if I'm reading this right, I think you're asking about how do we determine the 20/40/60? That was discretionary based on us thinking through combination of need and also thinking through, desire to get projects up and running in rural America. And so that was discretionary based on the agency. But the loan forgiveness, once we've agreed to it with you, is not discretionary. If you deliver on what you said you will, if you've built the plant and it's up and running, then you will get your loan forgiveness.
Right, and you will get the agreement for the category of that you're eligible for. So at the 20 or 40 or 60% threshold. That'll be established when we set up the application process with you.
Second question is, how often are lists updated? And there we go, Tasha. How often are those lists updated, in particular energy communities? We have a community that just closed a coal plant, but they're not listed as an energy community. How can we get them added? So the definition for energy community isn't based on a kind of live list. I know that Department of Energy has their interagency working group on energy communities, and they have a list of entities, but the definition we are using is inclusive of those entities, but it's using the IRS Treasury Department definition of energy community. And so if you go to that definition, you'll see, if it's on a brownfield site, if it's, in certain places, there's a number of different metrics they use. And if you have just closed down a coal plant, then you should meet that definition. And so it doesn't have to be on a kind of list that's constantly being updated. It's according to that definition, that Treasury definition. Anybody have anything to add there before we move on from that one?
No, that's right.
Okay. Is it valid to conclude that no award announcements will be made until the window closes on letters of interest? Yes, rolling basis for evaluations, but timing of announcements. So for the PACE program, we will potentially be, as I said, we'll be kind of processing those on a rolling basis. So it's very possible that if we move quickly enough and you move quickly enough, that an award could be made before that window closes at the end of August, end of September for PACE. So that's possible. It will be done on a rolling basis, like we said. For New Era, that will be, again, a competitive process. So everybody will submit their letters of interest by August 30th, and then that will close, and then we'll process everything and then come out and invite folks for that second round. But yeah, if you can move quickly with us, we can be announcing things, June 30th, the portal window opens for PACE, and then we can move things as quickly as both sides move. And then for Ian Mitchell, and actually, I don't know, I can see the questions on my screen, but I don't know if somebody wants to share, if our folks administering the webinar want to share screens so they can see them as well. But if you guys want to, if you open up the Q&A, you can see where we are, just so everybody's on the same page, what we're answering. So we have a question from Ian Mitchell. Would community solar projects, as defined by New Jersey's BPU, qualify if in rural areas? 50% of those projects must be 51% LMI. I think that we'll want to come back to you on this so that we can make sure we get it right.
Right. I think we'll need to research what the New Jersey rules are and whether that community solar project would fit our definition and be able to provide us reasonably adequate security. A typical renewable project would have a PPA or some kind of equivalent form of security to be able to make a loan. So we'll need to do a little research on New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Garden State, by the way.
William Steiner asked, define energy for resale. Oh, wait, sorry, Scott had a question. Scott Sutherland asked, is there any portion of a guaranteed loan in either program, or is it all USDA direct lending?
So the loans that we will have will be both direct. Well, they'll be direct loans, but you don't have to take the RUS loan. We will not be offering private sector guarantees, however, under these two programs. If you were in New Era, you don't have to take the loan, but you have to then self-finance the 75% that the grant does not cover. But both cases, the loans that will be in New Era, which will be either a treasury rate or as low as 2% or as low as 0%, those will be direct loans from RUS. And then same thing with PACE, the municipal rate loans will be direct loans from RUS. just that the interest rates will be different on each one.
Thanks.
Now, our sister agency, the Rural Business Cooperative Service, does offer the REAP program, Rural Energy for America program, which does offer loan guarantees. And if you're looking for a loan guarantee, that might be the right ticket.
And just to switch things up to make sure we're including some of the others from our team, Ken or Joe, I might have you answer not this next question, but the one from Scott Brad Miller about New Era on start of construction. So if you want to get ready to answer that. In the meantime, William Steiner asked, define energy for resale. Does this include biomass development? So Chris, do you want to take that one?
Well, I think that one is biomass development is the trick part of that question. So William, I mean, that might be a good one to submit to the LOI, because we still need to have a place where we're generating electricity. So it's not just the development of biomass. Biomass is an eligible source of renewable power, but we need to do more than just develop the biomass. We need to be able to use the biomass in a power production. So it's a little bit of a trick question there.
Yeah. So for that PACE program, it's power generation is what the statute requires. So we're looking for projects that produce electricity, and or have energy storage as part of them. Okay, so Scott asked, and Ken or Joe, do you want to answer this one? For New Era, what is the start of construction definition? Does construction start upon mobilization, or does it start with spending 5% or greater on project-specific materials?
Go ahead, Ken.
Good.
Okay. Well, the start of construction has to happen after NEPA is complete. So once your application is accepted, NEPA would begin, and you could start construction after NEPA. Also, all projects that started after the date of enactment of IRA are eligible, not before. Ken, you may have some additional information.
Yeah, and then the definition of what is mobilization is kind of a tricky one, but it is when mobilization, I usually consider is the start of construction, because that's when you're moving equipment in and you're starting to dig a hole. That is the start of construction. So I would consider mobilization the start of construction in this case.
Yeah, there are a number of activities that don't count towards the start of construction, but you're certainly at risk of having to absorb those costs if you do not get approved. So some of those activities could be like engineering. Some of those activities can be ordering supplies and putting them in your warehouse, and that would not necessarily start construction. We would urge you to contact us if this is a gray area for us, because again, Joe pointed out, under the statute, particularly for New Era, we've got to have it start after the date of enactment and after the environmental review process has been completed.
Okay, so Srikanth Madala, can a developer apply for PACE and the off-taker rural utility apply for ERA for New Era for the same project? So you cannot apply for the same project under both programs. And I understand the kind of gray area that you're pointing out here. What if you have two different entities apply for the same project? So I think that's probably best answered through a Q&A, so we can be really clear about this. But again, the point of this is that we don't intend to fund the same project under both programs, obviously, and you can't an entity can't apply for the same project under both programs. But we can, unless Chris wants to jump in, we can answer this through the Q&A.
Right, exactly. And we did address this in the NOFA. The principle is that we will not pay for the same thing twice. So You're not going to be able to double dip one side on ACE and the other side on New Era for the same project, or effectively the same project.
Mark Falconberry asks, or sorry, Scott Bradmiller asks, are wind or solar repower projects eligible under New Era? I'm not really sure what you mean by repower.
I believe,
Ken, go
I
ahead.
believe that's like an upgrade to an existing system. Yes, they would be.
For the upgrade.
Yep.
And again, assuming with repowering, you're meaning that the current system is either non-operational or not optimal or shut down, bringing it back to life or making it, extending its useful life. That delta, that increased investment potentially could be eligible, frankly, in both programs.
Or expanding its rated capacity.
That's right. Or adding storage on PACE.
So if you had a solar plant and you wanted to add storage, that could be eligible for PACE and for New Era. Okay. Mark Falconberry asked, speaker mentioned use of PPA as part of the PACE program. How would this work, considering that if we use a PPA, the cooperative would not be borrowing money that the loan forgiveness would apply to? I'm not so certain about the second part of this, but in terms of the first one, my point in raising power purchase agreements is that it has come up a number of times whether or not you need a power purchase agreement to be eligible for the PACE program, and if that needs to be the structure. So we, in the funding announcement, basically said you could have a power purchase agreement or other arrangement that ensures financial feasibility. So it doesn't have to be a power purchase agreement that you are using as to demonstrate financial feasibility. Although we love
and the power purchase also helps us establish who are the beneficiaries, because we can be able to determine from the power purchase agreement whether you meet the criteria of the statute. So the substitute or the alternate has to be kind of a comparable level of security. I think, though, the question, and this is another one where Mark, maybe a little more refinement and detail into the Q&A process might be get to exactly what you're concerned about. But let's walk through maybe how a developer would work on this. The developer maybe could apply. They would have the power purchase agreement that with the, let's say, eligible rural utility. Could be a co-op, it could be a municipal utility, could be any off-taker that is eligible and bankable under that agreement. And then the developer would get the loan to be able to build the project. This would be a case of project finance as opposed to system finance. The developer would build the project, deliver the project, confirm it, and then we would release the funds to the developer as well as the debt forgiveness. And the off-taker just would be your off-taker would establish the financial feasibility and the eligibility of the project. So in that case, it's the developer that would get the loan and get the forgiveness under PACE.
And Brian Borner asked, we have a current solar project, and Chris, I'm going to ask you to answer this one. We have a current solar project that is currently under final environmental review with USDA. We were planning to submit an application for a RUS loan before June 30th. If we want to take advantage of the PACE program, should we delay our loan application to RUS, or can we submit an LOI, a letter of interest, after June 30th and continue the PACE application process with the already submitted RUS loan application?
Yeah. You know, as we maybe mentioned before, the way we're handling both of these provisions, PACE and New Era, is it's basically the RUS loan program with a big bonus at the end. So again, you've not started, because if your hypothetical here is that you've not started construction, and construction would start after the date of enactment, which in your example here would, you could consider submitting an LOI as soon as you're ready, and then if it's in the money, we'll issue a request for the application, and a lot of the work that you've started on will be very, very useful for you to get a quick turnaround on the application process as you go from the first stage to the second stage.
Mhm.
So it's certainly not wasted effort at all.
But you do need to apply but if you do want to benefit from the PACE program, you do need to apply under it.
That's right. And remember, PACE is considered on a rolling basis, and New ERA is considered, again, against the whole field. So we're anticipating an avalanche of LOIs at the beginning of PACE and then towards the closing of the window in New ERA.
Okay. Bruce Bacon asked, can you explain what the grant would be for purchasing renewable energy? I think the principle here is that, and Chris, you should jump in, but is that for under the New ERA program, as written into the statute, you can apply for up to 25% of the total cost of your project in grant. And then you can use that towards eligible activities. So if purchasing renewables were one of them, then you could use that towards purchasing renewables.
Yeah, and the applicant will have to show us that the consumer is going to benefit from that. Really, in PACE is not so much purchasing as deployment, but we want to be able to see what the difference is between getting this financial assistance and not getting the financial assistance, and what that means to the consumers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's under the New ERA program.
Correct.
You can't. Yeah, that's not. You can't use
PACE.
that.
We wouldn't be financing the purchase of the renewable energy, just the development of the renewable energy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Madeline Klein asked, are there constraints or limits around the ways in which a co-op could use the funds to purchase renewable energy? Could they use it to lower the cost of power purchase agreement with a private renewable energy operator, for example?
That seems to me an eligible project, and then of course you'll have to figure out how well that will score. Mm-hmm. Because basically, if you're lowering the cost of existing power purchase agreement and doing nothing else, unless you're increasing your volume of renewable power, you're not likely to be able to show a great amount of greenhouse gas reduction from just lowering the price.
Mm-hmm. But we absolutely do want to see a lower price for consumers, and I think that's one great benefit of these programs is that you should be able to pass on some of those benefits to consumers, which is great. And again, as Chris noted, you would just want to think about your overall application and make sure you're demonstrating greenhouse gas reductions or avoided emissions or otherwise, so that you can again be competitive.
That's right, because this could be an element in a larger package of actions, a portfolio of actions. But yeah, just lowering prices alone probably that would not get you a greenhouse gas reduction.
The next question is from William Steiner, and I think we'll answer this through a Q&A to find stranded asset. So we can answer that through a Q&A and post that on the website. And then what criteria will be used to evaluate the reliability, resiliency, and affordability requirements? We can also answer that through a Q&A, but I think the basic answer is that we expect for the New ERA program, as it's written in statute, we expect that folks are submitting applications that are going to be reliable, resilient, and affordable. And there's a few things in the funding announcement that we'll point to when we answer that Q&A.
And the converse of those things are kind of self-evident. We would not approve something that's not reliable. We would not approve something that's not resilient, and we would not approve something that's not affordable.
Okay, the next question is Shrikant. Again, the question is, can you please direct us to the link where we can find a sample letter of interest for the recently published PACE program? So that is not online yet. We plan to post those so that folks get a better sense of what that exactly looks like. But if you go into the funding announcement for both, there is an outline of the information that we'll be requesting of you for that letter of interest. So that is to come. And then Mark Anderson asks, disadvantaged communities are often in urban areas. Sorry, there we go. Sorry, it's moving on my screen.
Yeah, will they still apply, I think is the question.
Yeah, will they still apply?
Yeah. As long as the application
I lost
is
it, sorry.
within the confines of the program. So for example, with PACE, you can have a mixed customer base as long as 50%, more than 50% of your customers are rural. So, and there are, believe me, plenty of disadvantaged rural communities too. So if your customer base includes some non-rural and rural, and that gets you into that category for disadvantaged communities, that could happen. Same thing with New ERA. You know, you want to be able to, if you're an existing or former RUS borrower or former REA borrower, you're all automatically into the program. So then you know, your customer base will kind of determine for your project whether you're eligible for some of the 0% in loans as low as 0% interest rate.
And Shrikant also asked, each ACE applicant or each PACE applicant may only receive one award. What if the applying entities are different project companies for different renewable energy projects, although the affiliate parent company could be the same?
If they're different legal entities and those different legal entities are taking on separate debt commitments, as opposed to the parent taking on the debt commitments for everybody, they would be, again, presumably separate LLCs. Now, if it were one entity, then you could bundle up. One thing we do is we allow for the bundling of LOIs in both programs. So there's some strategic advantages, perhaps, to bundling up projects.
The next question are the project loans under PACE eligible to refinance currently operating projects that would otherwise meet eligibility criteria? I think the clear answer is no.
It's an easy no on that one, correct. PACE is going to be for new investment in new projects after the date of enactment and after, of course, clearing environmental review.
And then, can rural municipal electric utilities or rural public power districts apply for a New ERA funding, or is it specifically meant for electric cooperatives? By the statute, it's written for electric cooperatives. And so you can see how that's defined in the funding announcement.
Right. Right. It's and again, rural electric cooperatives are defined as current or former RUS or REA borrowers or cooperatives providing service to predominantly rural areas or wholly owned or jointly owned subsidiaries of such cooperatives. So that's the only little wedge, is that wholly owned or jointly owned subsidiary of an eligible cooperative. Now, there may be other ways to cooperate or work with a cooperative where you know, the public power district or municipal utility you know, could be an off-taker of a cooperative run project. So but the statute is very, very clear that you do have to be a rural electric cooperative or again the jointly wholly owned subsidiary of such cooperative.
But obviously public power districts and others can apply for the PACE program as well.
Absolutely.
And you know what, one thing I didn't talk about in the presentation was kind of stacking and complementarity with other federal programs. So if you think about PACE, for example, it's new power generation, new clean energy power generation, and so it doesn't cover, you know, transmission, for example. While you have the DOE, Department of Energy Grid program or GRIP program that can support transmission. And so maybe you've applied for a Department of Energy GRIP, you know, some GRIP funding, and that's going to help support new transmission. And then you could apply to our program, the PACE program, to provide for new power generation. So that'd be a nice example of complementarity. You also have programs that can be stacked. So we don't have any restrictions around stacking as long as we're not paying for the same thing twice. But For example, there are the direct pay provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act for clean energy. And so you could use that 30% from the direct pay, or up to 30%, in some cases up to 40% direct pay incentive, and then have that on top of the loan forgiveness in our programs, or on top of, in PACE, or on top of other benefits that you are applying for under New ERA. So I think a lot of great opportunities for complementarity and for stacking with other federal incentives. And we'll probably be providing on our website at some point kind of stacking guides, so you can think about the other programs that might be applicable to your project. So just put that in as a note. Again, I think we've addressed the what criteria, RILAB resiliency. We'll do a Q&A on that. John Buffington asks, under New ERA for renewable energy procurements, what sort of structure do you envision between cooperatives and the renewable energy project? Could it, for example, involve a grant to the cooperative that could be used to reduce PPA payments? And how would that square with the 25% of project cost limitation, since that wouldn't necessarily be known to the cooperative? Could it be for 25% of the total of the PPA costs? I think, Chris, you can answer if you want, but I think this one might be one where it would be good to answer through a Q&A as well. Just to
I think so.
make sure
There's a lot of nuances and assumptions in a question like this. I just want to guide everybody to the concept here. To even be in the game for New ERA funding, you have to be able to produce a reduction in greenhouse gas and be able to rank well enough to be in the money against the in your peer group. So, but yeah, I think that one is there's a lot of nuances in that one, but be very careful how we answer that.
Can you share? I hope our lawyers are listening to us. We're being good. And anybody from our team, including our lawyers, should feel free to jump in at any point. Joseph asked, can we share a link to the achievable reduction tool? If it hasn't been published, when will it be? So we will make sure that's online before June 8th, when we will have a webinar specifically on that tool to be able to walk through it with everybody, so you all feel comfortable with what it is and how it will be used, etc. So that will be on at some point before June 8th. CP Smith asked, New ERA question. Remote rural communities in Puerto Rico do not generate much greenhouse gases, but electricity goes out every week. Won't our communities be scored lowly for replacing low greenhouse gas generation with renewable energy systems that improve resiliency? So I think that there's a couple of things here. One, we wanted to put out these two programs at the same time, so you could see both programs, the benefits in each program, and figure out what would make sense for you to apply to. So it could make sense so I'm kind of removing this as a New ERA only question, and saying, think about both programs and think about which it makes sense for you to apply to. If you're just doing kind of standalone energy generation, or you want to do 5 mini grids that each have energy storage as a project, it might make sense to do the PACE program. If you are a rural electric cooperative, and that's how you're incorporated, and you have that tax status, then you can obviously enter the New ERA competition. And we did think about this issue of, the two major factors. One, your size. So trying to make sure that you're competing amongst peers. So you would compete against only those with total utility plant value in that same category, those 3 categories. And so again, wanted to address competitiveness through that way and make sure you're competing against peers. And then we also, as you saw, will be scoring a variety of factors when it comes to greenhouse gas reductions. So yes, the greatest amount of points will largely go to those who are reducing emissions, straight emission reductions. But there are kind of those on-ramps for other kinds of emissions reductions. If you are, building new renewables, and that's replacing diesel generation right now. So that could be counted towards emission reductions. So anyway, that would be my slightly complex answer, is kind of thinking about both programs, what makes the most sense. And then some of the ways we address that were through total utility plant size and making sure you're competing amongst your peers. And then also having some different on-ramps for what counts as greenhouse gas reductions. Can applicants to New ERA and PACE combine incentives such as the ITC or REAP? So I was just talking a little bit about that in terms of complementarity and stacking. So we wouldn't pay for the same project under REAP as we, if we're paying for the project under PACE, REAP, then we wouldn't also pay for it under PACE or New ERA. But if you have different aspects of the project that you want to apply for, so you're applying for, part of the program under REAP, and then, or part of the project under REAP, and then you want to apply for, new renewable generation under PACE, you can do that as long as it's not, again, the same project that you are applying for under both programs. So that is the key thing, is please do not apply for the same project under multiple programs. And then you can absolutely use things like the ITC, direct pay, et cetera, and stack them with these programs.
Yeah,
Chris?
no one is going to get paid the same thing twice. You could, for example, if you want to do a REAP project, and let's say you are a utility, those REAP projects might count towards the scoring of your portfolio of actions to get a greenhouse gas score. But if REAP is going to be financing the project, RUS wouldn't be financing the same project.
Mm-hmm. And then Ken or Joe, I will invite you to jump in on this next question from Ashley Keltner. Is in New ERA, there's a category for energy efficiency improvements for generation and transmission. What is defined as transmission for it? Is it voltage level? And we can do a Q&A on this. Actually, maybe that's actually the best way to go here, just so that we don't want to put anything that's not actually in the funding announcement out. So
yeah, I think we should put that in the Q&A. It's better to find the voltage rating and the use of the lines.
Yeah,
that would be better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mark Craig asks, how will make-whole provisions be handled for loans that are refinanced, forgiven, refinanced? Chris, do you want to take this one?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question entirely, because we're not going to be forgiving any loans. Mm-hmm. I mean, that one is very clear. Among this very big bucket,
they may be talking about the stranded asset.
Well, stranded assets, we can refinance the stranded asset as with interest rates as low as 0%.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we can figure out if there's some other way to answer that. But I think that's the answer, is that as part of the program, as Chris said, we can refinance.
I need to be very clear, because and the reason there's some of this confusion in the original Build Back Better bill, there was provisions for debt for buying down stranded or forgiving stranded assets, but here we can refinance the stranded assets. The only forgiveness we have is related to PACE, where it's a partial forgiveness of a loan for new investment.
David Brown Kinlock asked, for the PACE program for forgiveness in Category 2, forgiveness is up to 40%. What criteria is used to determine if the forgiveness is 40% or something less down to 0? Is forgiveness at the inception of the loan as the loan is being paid back, or at the end of the loan? Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. First of all, as we move from the LOI stage, you'll present to us what it is you would seek and what category you believe you're in. We'll validate your category. When you get your invitation to apply, we'll describe what you're eligible for and what your application needs to be, what the criteria will be. Now, the forgiveness will not be at the inception of the loan. It will be at the end of the loan. meaning it'll be upon delivery of the project. So I may maybe need to explain a little bit about system finance and project finance. So system finance is the type of finance we've used for 87 years as the Rural Electrification Administration, Rural Utility Service, where we work with a utility. We have a lien on all of their assets. We have a lien on the entire electric system or a shared first lien in those assets. For renewable projects, we just have that project that we're working with, and there we will tend to not take construction risk on project finance. Whereas in system finance, because I have a lien on all of the assets, we can contemplate where it's financially feasible doing project payments while a project is being constructed. If you're in a project loan, we won't do that. We will release the loan funds at the very end of the process. In both cases, whether it's going to be PACE or New ERA, you'll get your either loan forgiveness in PACE or your grant in New ERA after you've constructed the project, after we've looked at it and validated and say, okay, mission accomplished, you've achieved everything you promised to do. And then you will get your either debt forgiveness in PACE or your grant in New ERA.
David Scott asked, does PACE require the project to support more than one single facility? For example, can an application be made for a single tribal casino?
It could in PACE. That I think could be possible, again, provided the single, like say there's a PPA with that tribal facility or it otherwise is financially feasible. And again, that might be another type of project to look at the REAP program for as well, to see if that works.
What should be included in a letter of interest? This is outlined in the funding announcement, so I won't go through all of the pieces right now, but we will also be posting online a kind of sample, an example, so you can see, and it can be even clearer. But I would just go into the funding announcement for now and take a look at the information that we'll require. And then are the 3 other webinars listed the same as this one today? Yes, that is a great question. Yes, they are. These are just meant to be, we wanted to have ones at different times to accommodate people's schedules. And we will be answering questions just like this in those. So it will be the first 30 minutes of presentation followed by 60 minutes of Q&A.
But we have no idea what those questions are going to be. So
yeah, so please feel free to join. But we will also be recording all of these. We are recording this, as noted at the top, and we will be posting these online as well. So if you can't join them and you want to come back and listen to the dynamic Q&A, then you can as well. And Mitchell asked, for defining which service areas are predominantly disadvantaged, does that refer to population or to land area? So let me go back to, we can do this one through Q&A as well. I was just going to open up my, to make sure I got this exactly right. I think you've got, can you use the screening tools? And again, the screening tools are online, and it's up to 40% total forgiveness if 50% or more of the population served by the proposed service area is located in the following areas. So distress advantage. So it's by population.
Is the population of the service area.
Yes. And then Jake Hopkins asked, if a GNT submits a joint LOI application on behalf of their members, can one of those member utilities submit their own LOI application for a separate project?
So again, another little bit of a trick question here. If the GNT is submitting it on behalf of their members, with their members each being part of that application, versus the GNT just doing it, as the G&T that delivers power to its members, basically get one shot. You can be part of a coalition or you could be separate. But in your example here, it seems like it's the G&T plus the distribution member in a single LOI. Well, then the distribution member wouldn't be able to file a separate one. If it's G&T in its own right, and G&T is doing it as the G&T corporate entity, even if it does serve one of those distribution members, then the distribution member could file its own application.
Yeah, if they're separately owned.
They have to be separate, right? They would have to be separate legal entities, unless it's a joint application. If it's a joint application, that's your single application. You're part of that joint application.
Great. My colleague is stressing that we should make sure that we are encouraging you to be bold here, and that you are, please be as ambitious as possible. Again, the projects that are more ambitious will score higher, and this is your opportunity to really be ambitious.
And consolidated, I think on these consolidated applications, they can be disaggregated as well. I mean, that you can consolidate for the LOI, and then we could disaggregate in the application process. So that might be another thing to think about if you're contemplating going in with a G&T and then wanting to do something on your own. Well, maybe you and the G&T might want to take the whole kit and caboodle in order to get a bigger score.
We are about 8 minutes out from closing, so we will try to run through some of these quickly. And then again, we will be holding webinars the next few dates as well. So please feel free to join if your question didn't get answered then. Okay, Jeff asked, will USDA be releasing information publicly about which LOI applicants are encouraged to apply? I think we have to follow kind of some good, strict confidentiality kind of laws that govern our actions. So awards, as always, will be made public, but we will unlikely.
The interim steps, we'll have to defer to council on that, but that's not typical.
Yes, that would not be typical. So awards at the end, yes. Interim, probably not. Although we might do some broad information like that doesn't have any information about the folks that applied, number of applications we've received, amounts we've received, things like that would not be attributable to any single applicant. Alex asked, does Russ plan to offer project awards such that grant valuation is maximized? For example, if Russ were to receive applications for grants, loans valued at 36 billion, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I think this is one that is a little bit complex, and so don't want to rush the answer here. We'll do happy to.
No matter what, you have to, your grant component, whether you're financing it in a loan grant combo with us or financing it with loans from somebody else or self-financing, is the project cannot have more than 25% of grant funding to it. So if you're not going to take the loan grant combo, you have to come up with the 75%. It'll not be, there should be no way for you to go above that, because that's a statutory requirement.
And Madeline Klein asks, of the almost 10 billion in funding authority for New Era, how much of that is available for 2023 funding and each year thereafter? We're putting this out
all on the table.
Yeah, it's all on the table. One big announcement.
Now, so come and get it. Whether any New Era could be awarded in fiscal year 23, I think is just highly unlikely given the schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Whether something potentially could happen in calendar year 2023, the stars would super have to align for that. Our anticipation is that New Era funding will go out largely in 24, but we're putting all the money out on the table right now.
Joy asks if a cooperative is using direct pay tax credit as the 25% match, what info needs to be provided with the Treasury guidance published yet? I think, first of all, we don't have a percent match as much as an equity requirement. And I think that this is a little bit of we can point you to the language in the funding announcement here, I think. And we do expect Treasury guidance to be out before folks have to apply for these programs, knock on wood. But I think that, until that's out, we don't want to be too definitive.
Right. We can't speak for the Department of Treasury. And if, the LOI process, we can, we can figure out where we think they might be, but then everything will be locked down, certainly by the time we're able to, approve an application.
And then Ferris Jabril asked, can you explain how stacking of benefits will work? Again, it's going to be dependent on what different benefits we're talking about. And we'll want to see the final Treasury guidance as well for direct pay. But there'll be, we'll probably put out some kind of stacking information so you can see the different things you might be eligible for. And we don't have restrictions on stacking or kind of complementarity, but other agencies might. So we also have to be aware of that. Lucas Johnson asked if a proposal contains more than one project, will funding be distributed at the completion of each project or only after all projects in the proposal reach commercial operation? Chris, you want to take that one?
I think that's a very good question for our Q&A because it's going to depend is the right answer. That's the short answer.
Okay, Q&A on that one. Can successful new era applications, and just so folks know, we are trying to say new era just so that there's no confusion between DOE's ERA program and new era. Can successful new era applications be funded in part if only a portion of the proposal is successfully constructed? Again, we can come back to you on a Q&A on that. We're just getting close to time. So I'm just going to quickly go through here and see if there's anything that could quickly be answered. That's not super specific to a specific question, to a project. Can PACE or new area be stacked with REAP? Again, can't have the same project under, please don't apply for the same project under multiple programs. But if there are different aspects of the project, then that can be considered.
And we will certainly double check with one of the questions you're asked, have you applied for other programs? And we'll certainly double check to make sure that different agencies don't fund the same thing twice.
Okay, great. So we are at time, and there are other great questions in here that we will pick up. Some of these we will do Q&As on, and then for some of them, please join our future webinars as well. Hopefully this was useful to you all. I know it was a bit of a marathon, but we do want to, again, be available for folks to ask questions. And these are really historic opportunities. We want you to be able to take advantage of them. We want you to be confident in how you can take advantage of them. And again, we just really welcome everybody. I think we want to continue to welcome everybody to be really ambitious here. Think big, so you can take advantage of these really exciting and historic opportunities. So thank you all for your time. Thank you to our team for your work here. Thank you, Chris, as always.
Thank you, Claire.
And we will continue on and look forward to hopefully seeing you at another webinar sometime soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.